Prepare as thoroughly as you can. The guys play their asses off.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game. Another game.
Listen, we're talking about practice. Not a game, not a game, not a game. We're talking about practice.
That you probably won't say it again.
I bet I do.
Okay.
Chris?
If you want to crown them, then crown their ass. If they are who we thought they were, when we let them off the hook.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Gather around, Skull Brothers and Sisters. This is Skull Ranch, brought to you by Minnesota Sports Talk. I'm your host, Dave. You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. And I got a special treat for you today. Loaned out from the Athletic. I got Alec Lewis. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. The intro got me high. Like I think I'd watch a football game tomorrow, or so I'm gonna have to pull the XFL or something to get going after that intro. That was pretty awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I always like to look at people's reactions to that video. Usually it hits pretty hard the first time. And yeah, I tried to what's the biggest rants out there that I remember, and I put those for it. But hey, Alec, like anything, having a first time guest, and if you come on 3 times, you become a friend of the program. But I always want to know, you write for the Athletic, but are you a Vikings fan?
I would say no. In the sense that I'm from Alabama originally, so my exposure to the Vikings growing up was I had 2 first cousins, Jordan and Daniel, who lived in Birmingham, Alabama, near me. Their family, funny enough, their mom, her family's from Minnesota. So they grew up Vikings fans, and they would be rooting on Percy Harvin, Seatric. I was like, what are the Vikings? Like, what? I didn't understand it. And then obviously, for me, all these years later, to get the job covering the Vikings, I've thought a lot about just that history and the fact that I was like, I didn't really know what this organization was. And now I know the agony that it's been through really, really well. But no, I'd say, in my role, there's the objective journalist of like, you just want to be, you want to cover the team objectively. And there's that. But I would also say that, like, you get to meet a lot of people within the organization, and that is players, that's coaches, and some of their stories and what they've gone through to get to where they are. And so as like a human being and like the empathy aspect of it, you just kind of like root for them in some sense. And so that would be the rooting interest probably for me, is like you just root for good people like anybody in life, hopefully.
Well, I imagine you kind of grow some attachments or find players you like better than others. And our last beat reporter for ESPN was a Chicago Bear fan, and now she reports for Chicago. So we understand. And honestly, I really loved your objectivity. So I appreciate yours. And the reason why I brought you on, because you're on Twitter. It's at Alec_Lewis, which is right above his head. So and I'll have that link in the description of the video, just so you can reach out. And I'll even add a link to an article you wrote about the OTAs. But mind you, for the low cost of $2 a month, you'll be able to read everything Alec Lewis writes on the Athletic. But hey, how'd you get there? You're obviously pretty young, probably half my age. From Alabama to being a beat reporter for the Athletic for the Vikings? How did that happen?
It's an awesome question. I
just spin gold here, Alec. You know this. Yeah, you do anyways.
It was a I'll say this. The easiest way to explain it is I played sports growing up in Alabama. I was not very good at any of them. I played all of them. I think I tried out for 8 high school teams, and I went 0 for 8. This was the worst performance you could ever.
You didn't get recruited by the Tide, then?
No, golf, soccer, basketball. Tennis. I played all of it, and I can play. Like, if I got you out, or any of the people listening, and I got you out on the tennis court or on the ping pong table or on the golf course, like, I can play a little bit, but I could not play well enough. And so I didn't make a team. So for me, it was like, I love sports. It was the thing that, like, it was my escape. It was the thing I loved. So how can I be around it the rest of my life? Wow, that's a pretty bold statement. But at the time, I was very kind of just hungry to find something that I was passionate about. And so I was kind of forced into it. And in high school, I started writing for the high school newspaper at my high school in Birmingham, Alabama. And I loved it. I love being around the game. I love asking questions about the game. I love learning about the game. And so it sent me on this path to Missouri for college, Missouri Journalism School, to internships in Milwaukee, in Kansas City, in Los Angeles. I interned at Yahoo Sports. I covered the U.S. Open. I did all this stuff. Gave up a lot of Friday nights, gave up a lot of Saturdays in college working. And then right after graduation, I started covering the Kansas City Royals for The Athletic for 3 years, covered Major League Baseball, and always knew I wanted to get back to football. So there was an opportunity to come up to Minnesota to cover the Vikings for The Athletic. This market is phenomenal with Michael Russo, who covers hockey for us, and John Krasinski, who covers the Wolves for us. So I was like, if I can learn from these guys, be alongside them, and then work with a new organization with a new regime. Like I knew Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell were taking over. I was excited to experience something new and watch it from the ground floor. So it's been an incredible ride. It's been a lot of time, a lot of words, way too many words, way too many bad sentences. But I don't take any of it for granted, and I am appreciative that I have the job every single day, and it's kind of the motivating baseline underneath kind of probably propelling me on a daily basis.
Well, one of the big reasons why I got you on is because you were pretty good reporting on the OTAs, and I kind of want to get your idea of maybe some battles out there. But first of all, is there anything that's really stood out to you, like some really big points that you took out of the OTAs?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I had a conversation with Cam Bynum after a practice last week, and we were just
Love that
talking
dude.
about he's I mean, one of those people, like I mentioned, just a great guy, and what he stands for is pretty easy to root for. But we were talking about, like, for him, this is his first season, I believe, with the Vikings where he's had continuity defensively. I mean, you
Mhm.
had Zimmer, then you had Donatel, and then Flores, and now it's obviously Flores again. And so for him, it was like,
Let me correct you, Donna Shell.
there you go. There,
Oh, go ahead, keep going.
that's the objective part of me. I wasn't. Yeah, the past is in the past for me.
Okay, go ahead.
I watched it all. That's for sure. But Cam was like, look, like the like mental the burden of having to learn a new defense every single year. It can take a toll. And so the fact that he doesn't have to this year, you can see like a comfortability, I think, with him. But it gets me to my broader point of just the defense as a whole. I mean, obviously, they brought in Shaq Griffin at cornerback. They brought in a bunch of edge rushers, including first-round pick Dallas Turner. The safety room with Harrison Smith and Josh Metellus and Bynum, like I just mentioned, is pretty stout. But just overall, I think you can see maybe a defensive confidence level that I think we saw initially last year at this time around, this time of camp, but it's at a different level and it's hard to miss. So that would be the first thing that stands out to me. The second thing, and I've just watched it as close as possible, is the quarterbacks. I've thought Sam Darnold has looked very solid in these practices. Now, let me make a clarification. Like, it's not like we're seeing a ton, and I'm not the biggest fan of like tracking passes, because let's just say I report that JJ McCarthy goes 8 of 10, then everyone thinks he had an amazing day. Did he, or did he just complete check down? If he goes 2 for 10 and I write that, then people think, oh, JJ McCarthy might be. So you have to be, I try to be, I would say, very mindful of not overreacting to these practices. But I thought Sam Darnold has looked very effective. And I thought JJ McCarthy has done everything you would hope and want him to do as a guy who's developing on a pace that the Vikings want him to develop in right now, which is a slow, methodical, take the right approach, kind of invest in the investment type of approach. So that's where I start. The defense, I think, is going to surprise some people nationally. And then the quarterbacks, it's going to be really interesting to just continue to watch both of them.
Well, I'm going to say the some question about the quarterbacks last, so the viewers have to stick around to hear it.
Smart.
But you brought up Dallas Turner, and honestly, that was just a gift from heaven. When we went through the draft and we trade up, and he's still there, and it's like, holy cow, he's still there. And you recently posted that of Christian Darrisaw saying Turner put a spin move on someone last week, and CD said the Turner spin move was quicker than Daniels. Well, he does run faster, and he's smaller, and he's a true outside linebacker. So, what did you see in that? And what do you take from a left tackle like Darisaw seeing that happen? It didn't happen to him, but he said it happened to somebody else. What do you take from that?
It was really high praise. I mean, Christian Darisaw has never been a guy for hyperbole. Like in all of the
Does he talk?
No, I mean he's a good, like I'll say he's a good dude. I've enjoyed. I remember my first year I did a profile of him and spoke to his mom, and I remember loving that conversation. Some of his coaches. I mean, he had a pretty interesting kind of background, but yeah, he's never been one to be loquacious, to be very high praise.
Loquacious.
Yeah, there you go.
Alec Lewis and Hermione Granger use that word. Go ahead.
That's I mean, so when he said that, I remember he said quicker spin move than Daniil, and one of the other reporters, it wasn't me, was like, quicker than Daniil's? Because Daniil, like, I mean, Daniil is another guy who I don't think nationally ever got enough credit for how effective he was as a player in terms of like his production, especially last year when the Vikings, I mean, yes, they had DJ Wanham, but from a pass rush group perspective, it just was not elite. And he really showed up and has since he returned from injury a couple years ago. So I took from Christian Darisaw, like he's really impressed by Dallas Turner. I'll also say defensive line coach Marcus Dixon spoke to the media, and he was like, he kind of said, he's like, Dallas Turner, this guy's ready. And then he like kind of walked. He's like, yeah, you know, he's got to go through the motions, go through these practices. But the praise for Dallas Turner is really high. It's not surprising when you play for Nick Saban and you watch Will Anderson on a day-to-day basis the way he did at Alabama. You're going to come in ready and prepared. And so to hear that he has done that doesn't surprise me at all.
Now you brought up off the air talking about that you were doing something for writing something about Van Ginkel, but on top of Dallas Turner, you brought this up that it was an elite pass. It wasn't an elite pass rush last year, even though we had an elite player in Daniil Hunter. But I have the feeling that we brought in players that are more suited to this defense that gives us flexibility. Greener can honestly take over for what Daniil Hunter was doing. And then you got a true outside linebacker for 3-4 and Van Ginkel, who was like the Swiss Army knife of the Miami defense. And every Miami fan, I'm living in South Florida, just raved about that guy. And they're shed a tear that he left the team. What do you feel about that new defense coming in?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil my story.
Hey, news at 11. Here, no breaking news. No, go ahead. No, don't spoil it.
No, but I'm tongue in cheek.
No one watches my podcast anyway.
No, it's tongue in cheek. It's tongue in cheek. Van Ginkel. I mean, it's a story about Van Ginkel, but essentially what you just said, like, I'm not sure there is a more perfect player for what Brian Flores wants in a defender than Andrew Van Ginkel. Smart, versatile, dependable. Now, he has gotten hurt. He's nursing a foot injury right now that he suffered season finale. But like he broke his nose last year against the Jets and stayed in the game. Like that, This guy, I mean, the other thing about him that's so interesting is like he was a quarterback in high school at this small time Rock Valley in Iowa. He wasn't recruited at all. Goes to South Dakota. Then he ends up at Iowa Western Community College. Then he goes to Wisconsin. And then Miami takes him the 5th round. And guess who had the number 7th highest pressure rate in the NFL last year among pass rushers? Andrew Van Ginkel. I think it was ahead of TJ Watt in some good. Now, pressure rate, sacks, that's a whole conversation unto itself. But this guy, and for me personally, my opinion, most underrated move the Vikings made the entire offseason was signing him. And now, again, health is going to be essential if he's going to be successful, if that's going to pan out. But I don't think we're going to talk enough about it. We probably won't talk enough about it in training camp, but then maybe week 6, if he's balling out, then then nationally, you're going to be like, this guy's perfect for Brian Flores. Like, yes, we knew that months ago if you're paying attention. So that's a guy, again, he hasn't practiced in these OTAs. That's a guy I'm really looking forward to watching.
Oh, so he's been sitting out then.
Yes.
You said nursing a foot injury.
He's been present, but he has not been on the field. It's mostly, which honestly, that's given Dallas Turner a lot of reps that I'm not sure I don't know what the rep number, what the rep allocation would have been had Andrew Van Ginkel been healthy. So, I mean, you could look at it as a negative that Van Ginkel is still nursing the foot injury, or you could look at it as a positive that Dallas Turner is getting the reps he is. And that's probably depending on the shade of your glasses, I would say.
Now, I really want to talk about the corners, but just briefly, give us an idea about like Cashman and the linebacker crew. Do you feel we're more deep now, or do you feel it, you know, like, Agent Zero can kind of go pass rush a little bit more? What do you feel about, especially Cashman? We don't know nothing about him really.
Yeah, I mean, like, I love Jordan Hicks, and I thought from a leadership
I like him.
perspective and a communication perspective, he was massive for that defense. But the reality is Blake Cashman is a lot more athletic. He can range across the field in a much seamless, more smooth way than Jordan Hicks could. So you're looking at a defense that is already really versatile and is kind of like positionless. And you add a guy in Blake Cashman who can really move sideline to sideline, and he can anticipate. And so I'll be interested, kind of to the point you just made, of like, who has the green dot? Is it Ivan Pace because he had it last year? Is it Blake Cashman because he has more experience? And then what kind of packages are they using? Are those two guys going to be playing together? We've seen some of that in OTAs. Or are they going to kind of mix and match? I mean, from a depth perspective, they added Camu Gruger-Hill, who is kind of a special teams backup guy. They still have Brian Asamoah, who hasn't factored in among the starters really at all in what I've seen this spring, summer. So I wouldn't say it's the most deep group. I'm also a little reticent. Cashman has had injuries in the past, and so it's something that's on my mind and will be until he stays healthy for a long time, just because that's how I am and that's how I think. But I mean, I love Ivan Pace. I don't think he gets enough credit. Like, people want to talk about the way he hits at his size, but like from an anticipation, see it, read, and react. Like, that's something you can rarely able to quantify. And I think he has it, that skill set, that quality, and it's really hard for I think these teams to find. And that's probably one of the key things that people miss beyond the size of what Ivan Pace can accomplish. So I expect him to be a major factor in what they do without question.
Honestly, when Asamoah got drafted, I felt like he was a guy that had those qualities of just being able to read the play and react, and just I just seen some plays that the whole team got faked except for him. So I'm kind of hoping he'll step up eventually, but honestly, he doesn't need to now, and I don't have to. If he doesn't pan out, I feel a lot better about what we have going on with Cashman and Ivan Pace Jr. But the biggest, I feel, battle out there that just we need some standouts in is the cornerback position, because I think our pass rush will definitely help them. If anybody's going to benefit for the pass rush that we brought in, is going to be these cornerbacks. And I saw that there's been some movement on who's starting at one and who's coming in and who's moving inside. Can you kind of cover what that looked like at OTAs?
Yeah, the first practice I can remember being out there, you had Shaq Griffin, the signee who played in Carolina, played in Seattle. You had him as one of the outside cornerbacks. You had Byron Murphy Jr. as a slot cornerback. And then on the other side, you had a Caleb Evans. And then the next practice, you had Shaq Griffin outside, Byron Murphy in the slot, and then Mekhi Blackman on the other outside cornerback spot. And this is nickel personnel, which is 5 defensive backs on the field. So it reminds me of last year, like around this time. I remember they were mixing and matching in a similar way. Like, you had one day it was a Caleb Evans, one day it was Joejuan Williams. And so I don't think they're going to tip their hand at this point of what they expect. And I think all those guys, the Caleb Evans, the Mekhi Blackmans, the Kyrie Jacksons, the 4th round pick from this year. I think all the Dwight McLaughlins, the undrafted player from Arkansas that they brought in. I think it's up to those guys to prove that they're deserving of the spot. And I think when you have the safeties that the Vikings have and the Josh Metellus who can play nickel and do certain things, they have a lot of ways to be flexible with it. But to me, You're exactly right in that is for this defense, the pass rush. If the pass rush improved, it'll definitely help the coverage. That's just how it works. But the cornerbacks are a major asset for Brian Flores. I mean, in Miami, he had Xavier Howard, he had Byron Jones, two guys at their time were really, really good. And so that position is really important. It's the one defensively that I think is right to watch moving forward. The other one for me is the interior of the defensive line. I mean, I thought Harrison Phillips and Jonathan Bullard held up against the run last year, but they played a lot of snaps, and you love some more pressure on the interior. So is that a Jerry Tillery? Is that a Jaquelin Roy? I think we'll see. But those two spots, the interior defensive line and then outside cornerback, it's what we'll talk about throughout the rest of the summer into training camp. And it's up to those young guys, the Caleb Evans, the Mekhi Blackman, the Kyrie Jacksons, to prove that they are deserving of the job.
Hey, next time you see Jaquelin Roy, tell him to get back to me, because he responded, and then I don't hear from him again. Jaquelin Roy, you told me you're gonna get back to me. Anyways,
he might be in the weight room developing. He's too busy.
Yeah, I need you in there, man. Honestly, I thought he would be I want to stick with the corners a little bit, but he's a guy I had tabbed to be a guy that would kind of not necessarily have a breakout year, but take a step forward, because he did show flashes. Now, about the cornerbacks, I think when we got Murphy, we wanted that flexibility of him actually moving inside, but we went big nickel. Do you feel like the fact that we made a nice little signing, and then we got Kyrie Jackson drafted, that now that is coming to fruition where Murphy will play inside, and that will affect Metellus' role?
I think having Murphy play inside,
ESPN's got Metellus listed as a cornerback.
Nobody knows how to categorize Josh Metellus. Like, Next Gen Stats didn't even know how to. They made up a whole new slot corner. They made up a whole slot defender title to categorize Josh Metellus. I don't even know if Josh Metellus knows how to categorize Josh Metellus. But in terms of Byron Murphy, and I believe they would want him to play in the slot. I mean, to me, that would probably be the primary objective, the ideal role. But, like, look, if they try to run with that group and it's Byron Murphy in the slot, Shaq Griffin outside, and a Caleb Evans on the outside, and they struggle, like, Brian Flores, just knowing how he operates, like, he's going to go with the group that gives him the best chance. And if ultimately that becomes Byron Murphy and Shaq Griffin on the outside and Josh Metellus in the big nickel, then that's what's going to happen. I mean, I also think I would expect Josh Metellus to play. I mean, he played a lot of snaps last year. I expect him to play a lot this year in whatever facet. Maybe that's as a quasi linebacker, like alongside a Blake Cashman or alongside an Ivan Pace. I mean, there's a lot of ways I think they can kind of skin the cat, and it's just good that they have a more experienced cornerback in Shaq Griffin that they can pair with Byron Murphy, because last year, once Byron Murphy got hurt, I mean, I didn't think Byron Murphy had the greatest year ever, but once he got hurt, the coverage just tailed off. And was that correlation? Was that causation? I don't fully know, but I have to think that played a big role in the fact that he wasn't on the field.
Yeah, I mean, a nice problem to have, honestly, is when you got Metellus there. And now I think recently a report came out of the buzz. I love the buzz. Is that Lewis Cine and Booth it's not clicking for them. But honestly, Booth started to get playing time last year. Lewis Cine still hasn't really done anything. But what's your sense of what's going on with them in camp?
Yeah, I mean, they've both been working kind of with the backup group. So as like the Brian Asamoah, like Theo Jackson has been a safety with that group. And I love Theo Jackson. I've said that publicly. I really think he is an underrated player on the team and just defensively. But yeah, I mean, Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth. I mean, look, it's to me, it's still development. It's how much can you rely on those guys versus how much do you hope that they can improve, and kind of the light goes on. But I mean, I'd be lying if I said I've seen a ton from them that convinces me that they are ready to be starter level impact players. It's just not where I'm at. And it's been tough for both of them. And they both navigated injuries. Lewis Cine's injury, obviously brutal in what happened in London. Just a terrible situation. But he hadn't been playing much before that, and obviously Ed Donatel, you used to call him Donashell. His
There you
defense
go.
was an interesting. To put it nicely, complex. It was a makeup of a lot of rules and a lot of processing on the field. 3-by-1, where do I go? Two, if they break out, where do I get? I mean, it was very complicated, and to learn that on the fly as a rookie, just not an easy task. But look, I mean, those two guys, it's really hard to say right now. I haven't seen enough of Kyrie Jackson to just be like, he's ahead of Andrew Booth on the depth chart. But I do think, I mean, it's really, it's up to all those guys in that room to prove, like, no matter where you were drafted, no matter what your status was at one point, like, can you play? And if not, Brian Flores, I mean, this is just how he's going to operate. Like, Ivan Pace Jr., undrafted player, he came in. Brian Flores did not care. He knew Ivan Pace could play. He played him. That's just how it's going to work. So if those guys don't get snaps with the starters, it's going to be because the staff doesn't think that they can impact the game. And that's just, it's unfortunate reality if that's the case, but the reality is what it is.
Yeah, the best player being put on the field is what we like as fans, and that'll just that will foreshadow what I'm going to end with the quarterback position. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about the offense. I never spent so much time on defense, but I know I only got about 5 minutes out of you left, but I'm going to squeeze 10 out of you. The offensive line, Blake Brandel was basically announced as the unopposed starter at left guard. And then the next day, we bring back Dalton Reisner. And it's still thought, according to reports, that Brandel's got the inside track on being the starter, but this is welcome competition.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, the skepticism that I would have would be on the interior of the offensive line. I mean, that group, there have been times, like I go back to last year when they played the 49ers on Monday night. I thought that was the best pass protection showing of Kevin O'Connell's time here. And the interior, and that was Dalton Reisner's first start here, really held up. But there have been other times, both in the run and the pass, where that group of Reisner, of Garrett Bradbury, of Ed Ingram, they've left a lot to be desired. And so to bring in a veteran guy in Dalton Reisner, who I thought played pretty well last year. I don't think he is. Sometimes I feel like the fans think he is your Steve Hutchins, like that. He is I mean, look, Reisner stepped in and did a really solid job in pass protection. He's not the most fleet of foot in the run blocking unit. That's just how it is. But to have a veteran guy who started a lot of games within the depth and the competition at those positions, to me, is huge. Whether that means Blake Brandel starts and Reisner's a backup, whether that means Reisner starts and Brandel's a backup, whether that means Brandel can slide over and play right guard if they're not happy with that Ingram. Like, you are more interchangeable now than you were in the past. And similar to how I just talked about Brian Flores defensively, I go back to last year. Kevin O'Connell said a lot, like, we're going to play the best five. And I'll tell you, looking at this schedule this year and how tough it is out of the gate, there is not going to be room for error for this Vikings offense to mess around with the offensive line. Like, it has to be your best unit from the get-go. There's no playing around when you're facing the 49ers, when you're facing the Texans, who now have Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter on the edges. I mean, they just cannot play around with the schedule early. And so to bring in another guy, to me, that's what it indicates. It's like we got to have the best five in here. Competition is good, and we'll follow it. But I don't like the Blake Brandel stuff. Like, I fully believe that they really like Blake. They liked him last year. I remember having conversations with coaches where they raved about him. So it's good if you like multiple guys and there is competition. I think for that spot, those three spots, they're going to be pivotal to this offense. It's not the sexiest thing to talk about, but they are really impactful positions. And so I think it's important to put resources behind them.
Yeah, in preseason last year, I was banging the drum for Brandel to start over Ed Ingram, believe it or not. And they had he played both right and left guard. His first game he played great at right guard, and then left guard he struggled a little bit. I thought, but just I think that gave us the flexibility, like you said. Now moving on to, and I think you wrote about Aaron Jones, and even I guess kind of tell us the depth situation there. Is there a chance that some of those guys will step up? Because I think Aaron Jones is coming in, but is he a bell cow guy at this stage of his career because of the 2 seasons where he missed a lot of time?
It's a good question, and it's a question
Gold,
for
Alec, all gold coming out of this guy right here.
no, and I guess when you ask that and you get that response, it just feels good, doesn't it? But Aaron Jones, like with the injuries that you mentioned that Aaron Jones has navigated, some soft tissue hamstring stuff, like it's a question for the Vikings of if they decrease his usage, but that elongates how often he's available, then maybe it's worth doing that to have him for a longer span of time. And I believe with what Ty Chandler showed at the back half of last year, the staff has a lot of confidence in Ty Chandler. I also think they really like using CJ Ham on third down as their pass protection kind of extra guy. CJ's been money in that role. He was last year. Kevin O'Connell, it was like a very low-key scheme implementation of Kevin O'Connell using CJ Ham as like a quasi 6 blocker. It really worked in some of those third and long situations. So I expect him to do that. And I think Ty Chandler will get a lot of looks, but you don't bring Aaron Jones in here, a guy who's going to be really motivated, considering the Packers wanted him to take a pay cut. He's going to be really motivated to produce. And you think about his ability. I mean, I said on the radio here maybe last year, like I thought he was the most underrated player in the NFL because when he was healthy, I thought the Packers offense was miles different than when he wasn't. So, I mean, I think if you have Sam Darnold or if you're playing JJ McCarthy, the idea of having an experienced, effective pass catching running back is going to be massive. And I mean, look, they talked a lot about improving the run game before last season. Didn't really improve very much. So the hope to me from the stats perspective would be that this guy's skill set allows you to run the ball more effectively, puts you in better down and distances, and makes it easier on the quarterback, which is going to be necessary whether you have Darnold or whether you have JJ McCarthy playing.
Now having him being just an all-around, all-down back, that Ty Chandler didn't seem to grasp the third down blocking assignments. And I was like defending him. And then then when he started and had to play more on third down, I saw it.
I would say, and this isn't like to take up for Ty Chandler because like if you're a professional running back,
I was a big fan of him coming out of college. I mean,
yeah, but like if you've ever studied pass protection from a running back, like if you watch clinics on it, like it is complicated. You're scanning, you're finding. I mean, it is not an easy thing. And again, like when you're a pro NFL running back, you got to figure it out. Like I'm not being way too nice. Like you got to figure out if you want to play, be a 3-down back. But I do feel like another year of growth will be important. And then to have Aaron Jones, a guy that he'll obviously look up to, like it can only help. And from everything you hear, Aaron Jones was huge in that Packers locker room of leadership, of mentorship. So that's one of those unquantifiable aspects of him being here that I think we'll probably talk about with Ty Chandler a year from now, 2 years from now, what have you.
Alec, speaking of spitting out gold, that was gold. The fact that you brought up the point, it is true. Aaron Jones, that's an awesome point that's just going to help Ty Chandler. And he is that type of guy. And another guy, just like Van Ginkel, a fan favorite over the Packers, much like Favre was at one time. We got Aaron Jones, a fan favorite. I don't think he's getting as much heat as Brett Favre did when he came here. But yeah, it's good. It was great to have him.
I always think about it like if the fan base that loses the player is like distraught, upset, like something's good about the guy you just brought in. Like it's kind of like in baseball when like you pull the pitcher and the other team's like breathing more easily. Now it's like you probably shouldn't have pulled the pitcher. Like if they were stressed about him, that's how it is. So that's kind of how I think about it. And Aaron Jones, like when that happened, I was getting Twitter people like crying emojis from Packers fans. Like they were that upset about it. You go through what he did in the playoffs last year. believe he ran for 100 yards in every one of those playoff games. And so just a dynamic guy, and the age and the injury history, we could talk about all of it. You're never going to be able to fully say a guy's going to really impact, but I mean, that's a move where it totally makes sense. And even in hindsight, if it doesn't work, I would say the move made sense.
Yeah, when Danielle Hunter left, I'm sure we shed tears, but when we saw what we were getting, back in free agency, it's almost like we moved on. Honestly, Danielle Hunter was great for us, but the fact that we got, peanut butter spread, and I feel like I'm the only one who uses that term. I've been told, but we kind of spread that talent farther across the defense to where I think we will be a deeper defense. But the what I've been teasing this whole time was the quarterback position, and I did a video recently, and I think it was Rap Sheet. Ian Rappaport said that Sam Darnold is known to shine in shorts, and it looks like he's shining in shorts on OTAs. Is this going to carry over to when he gets to see a pass rush? How do you feel about that?
I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you.
I want a crystal ball, damn it, Alec.
Yeah,
I want to know.
I mean, I always think about it. Like I mean, yeah, it simulating playing quarterback is impossible. It is it's why development is so hard. It's why quarterback development is so hard, because you can't really know. You can't really simulate a real life. You can simulate a pitcher who throws 94 miles an hour. You can simulate what have you. In soccer, you can simulate goalie. There's certain things you can do. In quarterback, you're simulating a defense coming at you. You're simulating the mental stress of knowing the play and knowing what the defense is doing. You're simulating guys moving full speed across the field. It is really hard. And so when push comes to shove for Sam Darnold, how will he perform? I don't know. What I can tell you is I don't like, and this is going to be another story for me, but I don't know if you can put enough into just understanding the circumstances that he was in throughout the first 4 or 5 years of his career in New York and in Carolina. Some of the most disjointed, some of the most just suboptimal circumstances to put a guy in. Now, he would tell you, I'm sure, you can't, that's not an excuse. And he's got to play well, and you can't turn the ball over even if your coaching isn't good or stuff's going on. Like, that's just how it is. So I mean, he knows this is his probably last real opportunity to prove it. But I would say, I mean, in terms of a coach that will believe in him, an environment that will believe in him, skill players to throw to, it's as good of a situation as he's been in with Josh McCown, a guy he's really familiar with, and they love each other. So I'll be fascinated to see it, because I often think about quarterback. I'm fascinated with quarterback development because it's the most important position in sports. And I always think about it from the front end. Why is a guy going to succeed? And I never think about it from really the back end of like, why didn't the guy succeed or why did he? And so this is a very interesting example for me of like a guy's quarterback development at a certain point in his career. So I'm looking forward to following it. And all I can give you is what I've seen, which he's looked pretty good. He's looked pretty accurate. He's looked confident, comfortable. And for now, that's all I've got.
And speaking of quarterback development, and clip it, quarterbacking is hard, but speaking of quarterback development and Josh McCown having that previous relationship with Sam Darnold, because they were both on the Jets together. He was their backup and he was mentoring, Sam Darnold while he was starting. But you wrote something about that Josh McCown learned something from being the quarterback coach at Carolina over Bryce Young. Can you, because it was behind a paywall and I'm too cheap to spend $2, can you kind of give us a little bit of knowledge there about how he's learned from that?
Got to get you to subscribe. I don't know. We got to do it.
I will now, but yeah, I was trying to read the article before I got on here.
I'm going to have to give you some good stuff. It's going to have to be so good that I just
told The Athletic is awesome to read. And now that I know Alec Lewis, I'm going to pay the $2. Or if there's a yearly subscription, I'll pay that. Do I get a deal? Do you have a code you can give me, Alec?
We'll see what I can do. I appreciate it. I mean, Josh McCown. I asked Josh. This was the first time he spoke to the media publicly last week, and I that's what I was curious about. Is like obviously Josh was in a million systems in a million different environments, so he knows so much about playing quarterback. But quarterback development is a thing unto itself. Just because you played quarterback doesn't mean you're going to be the best developer of quarterback talent. It's just not there. There's nothing to prove that that's going to be the case. So he was around Bryce Young that first year in Carolina. And I asked Josh, like, what do you feel like you took from that experience that applies here? And there's a lot he can't say because David Tepper in Carolina, the owner there, has a lot of influence, and he has influence on draft picks and who's taken and where. And I mean, when you're the owner, that's how it works. And that creates a lot of dynamics. But I would say that Josh McCown said to me, he's like, look, I mean, you just can't, no matter what a guy accomplished in college, you can't overlook the hurdles that are going to lie in the NFL for everybody. Bryce Young won the Heisman. He's small, but I mean, you watch him in Alabama, he orchestrated the entire offense. And you watch him his first year and it did not go smoothly. And now again, was that his offensive line? Was that his receivers? Was that himself? Was that coaching? Was that it's never really clear cut and easy to assess. But Josh's point was really like you have to take it slow and you have to be methodical and you have to not expect incredible things from the outset. It can happen. CJ Stroud proved that last year. A guy can come in and go gangbusters. It's possible. But to think that's going to happen for everybody would be a fool's errand. And so that's why I commend the Vikings for the way they've handled JJ from the moment they drafted him. They've talked about wanting to take a long-term view. Is that fun for all fans? Is that fun for the media? I would love to see him in live action. But I think all fans would say ultimately you'd love to see him succeed. And if that means more time studying, practicing, learning behind the scenes, then ultimately you'll look back and be thankful for that. And that's the approach they're taking. And again, I commend them for it. And I think some of it is probably built from Josh's foundation, watching how it went in Carolina.
Yeah, I don't need to have Josh Allen or Josh McCown on here. I just need Alec Lewis to talk about his conversations with Josh McCown. I feel like I was there.
That's the whole. I mean, it's funny. People sometimes will make fun of my and I love it. Like they'll make fun of my writing. It's like you didn't have to place me in that scene like that viscerally. But
I love it, man.
That's what I love. Like when I read books and I watch movies and it sounds very nerdy writer thing, but you want to build a world, and especially in this day and age where people are rarely reading. I got to be honest, people don't read a ton in this day and age, especially people my age. So what can you do to make it engrossing for them? That's what I love to do. And you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. I love learning about all of this because it's so complicated and we all love it. And so that's the passion that's driven me all the way to this point. And I hopefully I don't lose it, but maybe I'll run out of energy at some point.
Well, I think there's a bunch of $2 subscriptions coming to Athletic after this YouTube video, including myself. But hey, Alec, I appreciate it, but I want you to. This is going to be clipped. This is your prediction. You got this is set in stone. They talked about that if JJ McCarthy met certain hurdles, stepping stones, that he would have an opportunity to take over week 1. From my understanding, I don't feel like that. I don't feel like that's going to happen. I don't think you feel like that, but I want your official opinion that's set in stone that we're going to hold to you the whole season, and we're going to tease you if you're wrong. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of JJ, you can clip it. I've been wrong. I hate being wrong
right now.
I hate being wrong, and I hate predictions because
I'm kidding.
No, but no, seriously, I think Sam Darnold is going to start the season as the Vikings quarterback, and I think he should. It's just, I'm sorry, unless JJ McCarthy is so overpowering in training camp where everyone in the building is what are we doing? Maybe, but again, I am a big fan and I've come to be this way through a lot of reporting around sports, that people have such a hard time taking the long-term view because they want results now. And it's a life thing too. But I think in this specific scenario, I think taking the long-term view, whether that means JJ starting after the bye week and after London, whether that means he's starting after Thursday night Rams and like week 9, week 10, whether that means he doesn't start at all year. Like, I don't know. And I don't think I haven't seen the list of checkpoints he needs to pass. Unfortunately, if I can get my hands on it, I'll share that and report that,
Please,
whatever.
Work on that.
But
hey, Josh, tell your buddy Josh.
Yeah, exactly. Let me text Josh when we get off. But I look, like, to me, people are going to want to overreact. If he's not playing by week 9, people are going to be worried. I guarantee you, the fans, does that mean he's not developing right? And like, that's just how people are going to be. But I would just caution everybody, like, the people in the building, the Kevin O'Connells, the Josh McCowns, the executives, like they know this stuff. Now, do they know everything? Are they always right? No, but and I'm gonna believe that they know when a guy's ready more than I do, and so I would expect Sam Darnold to start, and I think he should. Like I'm interested to see, as you could probably hear with me, like I'm interested to see what Sam Darnold does in this system with these coaches and with these skill players. And you never know what happens. It's going to be tough sledding out of the gate. So I'm fascinated, but that's what I'll say. I wouldn't put the pressure on JJ to be the guy right up here. I just wouldn't.
I like messing around a little bit, but hey, man, if the listeners were listening today and you saw this video, you would probably put this up there. And I've had almost 1,000 videos. That this video right here, Alec Lewis, my guess, is in the top 10 of all those videos. I'm not lying. I appreciate you come back and make sure you go to Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, get on Twitter just so you can see at Alec_Lewis, ALEC_Lewis on Twitter, and spend that $2 to the Athletic and hear that gold being spun as the dew comes off the field and the sun setting and the glistening sweat, that Alec portrays in his writing. But hey, it was a pleasure having you on, man.
No, thanks, Dave. That's high praise. I appreciate it. Any fan, I love interacting. It's what makes the job fun. And yeah, I'll be out there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're going to have a fun week. There will be hopefully some interesting stuff coming on. And
I'll be quoting more of your stuff when these, now that you're on my For You page.
Yeah,
I'm gonna now that I know who you are. No, I'm kidding. No, but the For You page, I'll be posting your stuff and promoting you as much as I can. And one of these days you'll be on YouTube, and all my listeners will gravitate to you and stop watching me. But
no, that'll never happen. Not even.
I know. I'm just too good at my job. I'm too good at the craft, man.
Yeah,
all right. Skull Vikes.